In our reading, we're moving very quickly through the Gospel of Mark. Mark is a very short gospel. I want to follow some of the quick movements of Jesus. Mark seems to be in a rush to tell the story, although the people who notice this sometimes neglect to see that Mark has some details that the other synoptic, those Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called the synoptic gospels, but he has some details that Matthew and Luke do not have. Some of the model of how the gospels came to be is modern scholars say, well, Mark was written first, and then Matthew and Luke follow with Mark's outline, but Matthew and Luke have a source of sayings that Mark doesn't refer to, and then they have their own sources that are unique to Matthew and Luke. Now that's the model. So the other Gospels come, Matthew and Luke come later and work in more detail, but there are details in Mark that are not in Matthew and Luke. So that German model that was developed in the 19th century doesn't really hold, though it's still being taught today. But what I'd like to do rather is to talk about the movement of Jesus. In chapter 3, he is healing a man with a withered hand, and the Pharisees immediately hold counsel with the Herodians how to destroy him. Then Jesus appoints the apostles, and there are those who, the scribes saying that he is possessed, and that's how he has authority over the demons. And Jesus then gives warning about those who would claim that good work being done is the work of the devil, and utters a warning against blaspheming against the Holy Spirit. Then we have several parables, and then Jesus crosses to the other side and stills the storm. Now, that may be the ending event in the church calendar of the Epiphany season, depending on how the church calendar goes in the lectionary readings for Sundays. But clearly, the question was, who then is this that even the wind and waves obey? Well, there is only one that the wind and waves obey. And Jesus has shown how it is he has power over the unclean spirits, is because, well, God is binding the household of Satan. And then we come to Mark 5 with the Gerasene demoniac, the one who says he is legion, for he is many. Notice that Jesus has crossed from the area where Jews live into an area where they don't live. This area, Decapolis, is not even interested in keeping kosher. So Jesus purposefully crosses to outside of Israel, but not only outside of Israel, to meet with somebody who's an outcast of those outside of Israel. And this man with a legion of demons that Jesus cast them all out is the only one in Mark's gospel where Jesus tells that man to go and tell everyone all that the Lord has done for him. Everyone else, Jesus tells them to keep quiet about what's been done, and they spread it abroad. He tells this man to go and tell. And now, understand, this is well outside of any of the people, well outside any of the tradition of Israel. And then coming back, a leader of the synagogue, the same, somebody in a category of the leadership that wants to get rid of Jesus, comes begging for Jesus to heal his daughter who is at the point of death. And so Jesus goes, and while he's going, a woman who has had an issue of blood, who is supposed to be considered unclean. She's not supposed to go anywhere without announcing that she's unclean. So she is really separated from being able to celebrate with God's people while she has this disease, and she touches his garment. Jesus notices that power's gone forth and somebody's been healed and wants to know who it is, and says, "Go, your faith has made you well." And so while this has happened, shortly thereafter, rather, some people coming from that ruler of the synagogue's household saying that the child has already died. And Jesus says she's only asleep. They laugh at him. He puts everybody outside, and except for the child's father and mother, and she says, "Little girl, arise." Now that's the same word used for Christ being risen. It's a resurrection word. So we also know that both Elijah and Elisha had raised sons who had died. This is a little girl who's not so little. She's just on the edge of adulthood. And remember, this is a leader of the synagogue's little daughter. So Jesus is going forth to those outside Israel. He's also lifting up those who are kind of outcasts within Israel, and he's going to the household of a leader of the synagogue. In other words, Mark very quickly in these three stories, we very seldom read them together in the church as all one reading, but he is quickly moving outside Israel, but also taking care of everybody who is of Israel, and even those who are the category of those who are making themselves to be Jesus' enemies. There is no one that Jesus is not reaching or unwilling to reach or touch or to heal and show his resurrection power. And shortly thereafter, he's rejected in his own hometown. Then there's the feeding of the 5,000 and he walking on water. All this to show that, yes, Jesus is God in the flesh. And shortly thereafter, again, he leaves Israel. Now, when we quickly catching up to the readings we've been reading, when he goes to Caesarea Philippi, I mean, he is far from Israel. Caesarea, named after the Caesars, and Philippi, named after the father of Alexander the Great, the Greek conqueror, and it's the Greeks that horribly oppress the Jews, and the Jewish leadership then makes a treaty with the city of Rome to take care of their Greek problem. So Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" in a city well outside of Israel that's named after the principal oppressors of Israel. And then quickly is heading to Jerusalem and saying what must happen there. So I'll end this quick exposition that's now approaching 9 minutes on several chapters of Mark's Gospel, and I hope that this is helpful. Thank you very much.